Some of you may remember me from the early days of Ethereum. I came in to manage the project release, I guess I joined late 2014. Spent about a year with the foundation, and I have been pretty quiet for a couple of years because I was working on a big unsolved problem. So when I was still at the foundation, I started building outreach to the City of London legal community because I knew that we were going to need some way of enforcing smart contracts as legal contracts. And the template that I was working from was Ian Grigg's Ricardian contract model. So this entire talk is basically an update of the Ian Grigg Ricardian contract model from the perspective of trying to turn that into a generically available technology, which we can use all over the ecosystem for basically everything where we need to touch what we call fiat assets. So basically, I've spent a lot of time rolling around with lawyers. This is what I've learned. So the first concept is the concept of a fiat asset. Right? We have a nice clean compartment for crypto assets. We all kind of know how that works. We know that possession of the keys is possession of the asset, all the rest of this. Right? Fiat assets are the assets that are controlled by governments. And a nice way of thinking about it is if the legal status of the asset changes when you cross a border with the asset, it's a fiat asset. So if I take my wallet out and I put it on the street in London, 20 minutes later my wallet is gone and the police don't want to know. If I take my wallet and I put it out on the street in Saudi Arabia, I come back in 2 weeks and it's surrounded by traffic cones. Right? So that is an example of a fiat asset. The local governance regime directly controls how the asset works. Right? The asset is, in a sense, produced by the governance of the material world that the nation state provides. And this is the world of fiat. Now, fiat is not just fiat currency. It's houses, because they're on national property registers. It's cars. It's anything that has regulation attached to it. That's the fiat world. So the question is, how do we control fiat assets with code? Simple enough. So I want to put this in the context of global trade, right? Right now, something like 50% of global trade goes over high-frequency trading systems, which are basically enormous server farms where they measure out the cables to the trading computers basically to the millimeter so that nobody gets an advantage in trade because they've got a shorter cable and they can make decisions faster. We're in an age when nearly all of our really big global systems are directly affected by the speed of light delay. Right? GPS works on the speed of light delay. HFT is optimized for speed of light delay. Google Spanner gives you a 7 millisecond window in which a transaction could have happened. So they just put a little delay, and that's why things like Google Docs don't get screwed up when you use them internationally. And we've got blockchain, which solves the light speed delay problem, which prevents us from synchronizing the computers with a batch, a block. Right? 10 minutes for Bitcoin, 15 seconds for Ethereum. That's there to manage the speed of light delay. So my contention is that global trade is either going to be completely centralized, or you're going to have to synchronize computers internationally to conduct global trade, and for that it's either going to be a blockchain or something equivalent. So I'm completely convinced that the synchronization of the world's computers for all purposes of global trade is going to wind up on a blockchain or a closely equivalent technology.
I think where we're heading is further innovation and experimentation, but complementing that with real-world tests and not just relying on the theory or the paper exercise, and doing that in a kind of regulatory sandbox where actual usage and institutions and commercial banks and retail banks test what that looks like for them. And we're seeing a lot of examples of that with the work that's being led with the BIS and all the participating central banks, but also in smaller jurisdictions actually implementing this in production. And we're seeing very early results of that in various countries around the world. I think where it's heading is the bigger jurisdictions need to weigh up and balance the risk benefit and why a CBDC, what makes it different, what makes it unique. And we're kind of at the inflection point where they've done the economic research, they've tested a lot of the use cases either internally or with participants or with institutions directly, and now they want to really understand, well, what does that actually mean to the financial system that they're responsible for. So what we'll see in the next 5 years is the beginning of the implementation of CBDCs in various forms. And most jurisdictions would pick the right use case and the right type of CBDC that works best in their financial system. And with the help of the banks and the participants, they're going to collaboratively implement this and make it part of the financial system. Money is, in its current form, outdated. It's no longer able to keep up with the way we as a society operate so digitally. And you know, we're very complex in terms of transacting between different parties. Even just doing your grocery shopping is a complicated thing today. But the evolution of money into a CBDC means it's programmable, and a lot of the risk, a lot of the uncertainty, and a lot of kind of the manual barriers and the friction that we have today with a binary money system will go away, because you can automate that with the technology underpinning blockchain, such as smart contracts. And you can really tackle a lot of those complex things in a very seamless way. So businesses and consumers can put some logic behind how money should work, or how a transaction should be completed, when it's completed. If my builder completes the renovations on time and it's certified by the conveyancer that it's been done to an appropriate level, and council approves it from an inspection perspective, then you can release the money. Doing that transaction in the binary system is very complicated and quite manual, but you can automate that with smart contracts and a CBDC. And you take that complex equation and program it into money itself, whilst all parties are involved and they're participating, and that way you really get the benefit of automation by getting rid of all those complex workflows. This is a large era of transformation, and as an industry, we're all working towards the same goal, and it's really enabling the implementation of digital assets within the financial system, and other systems as well, like healthcare, trade finance, supply chain, etc. What we need to do as an industry is work and collaborate to make this happen. You can't have one single person, one single company, or one single organization, like a university, for example, bringing this about. It's a joint effort. And so we as a company, and personally as well, have been involved by giving back and contributing to various initiatives, including standards through ISO. We're doing protocols with MIT and IATF, and also trade bodies and industry bodies like Digital Pound Foundation. And we're London based.
I have been pretty quiet for a couple of years because I was working on a big unsolved problem. So when I was still at the foundation, I started building outreach to the City of London legal community, because I knew that we were going to need some way of enforcing smart contracts as legal contracts.
And this is home for us. And this is a great way for us to bring that world experience back into the UK, contribute with our peers into policy thinking, into some of the use cases, for example, as you mentioned, and really be able to do this as a joint initiative, because it really needs the momentum of the industry to get behind it, to make this transformation happen. And we're very excited to be part of it, and we're very humbled to be able to be in this situation, to work with peers, and help government understand what this means, help policymakers derive the right policy, and really help with the technology and standards and our thinking to make this a growth initiative for the UK, and that's what's happening. The government's understanding that this has a lot of potential, not just to transform the financial system, but to bring a lot of benefits and growth to the country, and we're very glad to be participating.
Something I just want to point out real quick is understanding that while we're not fans of ERC20, it is the most popular smart contract template in the world. If you're new to Quant, welcome. Try to learn as much as you can about Quant, but understand that While we're not fans of ERC20, even though Quant in itself is an ERC20 token, it is so much more than an ERC20 token. Understand that while most of the retail world would label ERC20 as the most popular and widely used smart contract standard on Ethereum, it's not exclusive, of course, to the retail world, but does see a lot of use in that space because it simplifies creating and trading tokens. If you're still new to even the idea of ERC20, you have to keep in mind it's a recipe for building tokens on Ethereum. It, of course, set clear rules for how things like transfers, balances, and even the approval process works. It, of course, made it easy for developers to do what? Create tokens, and for wallets and exchanges to integrate with them. When we talk about Quant, we could look at it from an institutional side of things. Quant would be absolutely worth a lot. Why is that? Well, because they are the foundation for building the institutional infrastructure on blockchain. Don't believe me? Go to the Quant Network site. Check it out for yourself. There's more than enough interviews and explanation on its use case. As we know, ERC20 has a lot of popularity because of its smart contract, and it also has standards, but ERC20 in itself, whether we like it or not, is still the most established and well supported, currently speaking. What about when you have Quant being the most established, well supported? From an institutional point of view, do you understand how big that will be when it comes to the big money? A large number of existing tokens, as we know, use that ERC20 standard, making it familiar, and also reduces technical barriers, of course, for other new projects. Let's face it, most of those are memes, but some of them aren't. In the retail world, we know ERC20s are used for a variety of purposes, including things like loyalty programs, security tokens, and it means a representation of ownership in digital assets. So I want everybody to understand that while ERC20 isn't specific to retail, it is in fact a dominant force, of course, in the Ethereum token space, which, as we know, turns in itself to play a big role in the crypto portion of the retail world. What happens when Quant takes us to the institutional side of the world, which they already have? Those tests are done. Now it's getting to the next particular phase of what I would like to refer to as a mainnet. Will Quant be the institutional standard for smart contracts, or in this case, like what you saw, these templates? I think the answer is yes. Are you betting on Quant, or are you getting footed out? Access to 2 public testnets, 2 token flow deployments, chain agnostic smart contract templates. Templates? They're providing templates for chain agnostic smart contract templates? Of course they are, because Quant in itself is blockchain agnostic. In closing, big shout out to Tokenizer. Take a look into this for yourself. I thought it was a big deal, but he mentions this, and that is finally there's an emphasis on what? Well, interoperability with existing payment networks as well as other CBDCs and open source blockchain networks. Where does this come? It comes from the IMF, CBDCs in Asia Pacific. As you get further into this, he notates that retail CBDCs in Thailand are intended to be interoperable with the existing payment system through a bridge or application programming interface, API gateways. Let's face it, guys, when it comes to Quant, they're all over this like Augustine Karsten's on cake. When we get further down into this, what specifications, what choices? Well, that operation model shows a 2-tier central bank that issues a CBDC in private sector that interacts with end users. What about the whole thing that we mentioned earlier from many outlines about interoperability with existing payment networks? You do meet that check, right? It's already there. It isn't highlighted, but I'd also want to point out in regards to China. Authorized operators in a second tier, commercial banks. For China, banks may collaborate with non-bank service providers and telecom operators. Where's that source? Again, from the IMF survey on CBDCs and crypto assets. I will agree with Tokenizer. Things are definitely heating up in Asia. As you can see on this next particular slide, there's a whole ecosystem in regards to all this. Retail CBDC pilot programs. And you see how it all comes together. Person to person, person to merchant, merchant to merchant. But it's all broken down to make it come together. What made it come together? You better believe it was Overledger from Quant network that provided these things. Institutional layers for end users, the intermediary, and also, of course, the central bank. As you get more into this, I've shared this before from the PDF. I remember this one from the BIS Innovation Hub. But the bottom line is, just like you heard Gilbert Verdian mention in that particular video clip that we just shared, the Roslyn Sandbox, and understand how it all comes together. But this key area I want you guys to understand is that core API layer. Just because there's some FUD that you may have heard in regards to, well, Quant doesn't need ISO 222 because it's, you know, its own standard through TC 307. Understand that Quant complements even ISO 222. And you do see in regards to the core API layer in regards to messaging. I love that example about orchestration because let's face it, when we talk about orchestration, you got to look at Gilbert Verdian as being literally the conductor of it all. This last part, I think we also need to point out as well. The Bank of Thailand released that report on its retail central bank digital currency, CBDC pilot, generally happy with the results. They believe that the retail CBDC will promote innovation. Again, back to what Gilbert was talking about. It has no immediate plans to release a digital bot, but they have plans to open a sandbox for what, guys? Private programmable payments and tokenization. It's all already there. And just like, you know, Tokenizer pointed out, in Asia in itself, you see from the IMF report about CBDCs, common consensus to be API gateways and two-tiered models, exactly like Rosalind. So it's already there. They are using the infrastructure. And it seems as though that there's a specific highlight in this course report. He already highlighted it. And how they mention Thailand's CBDC, how it will operate, interoperate, I should say, with existing payments via bridges or API gateways. SATP is perfect for all of this. How so? Back to this part. Because CBDCs have the ability to interoperate not just with other DLTs, but the existing payment infrastructure and that tech. So I want you guys to understand that, you know, at the end of the day, you have an idea of how it comes together. How the sandbox is ran by API gateways. How QNT is seemingly becoming like the standard for the future of finance. Why is that? Because it basically created a function a long time ago that stood out ahead of the pack by being blockchain agnostic. In closing, I just want to point out to you guys that, you know, if you're the type of person and you're like, I don't know why this all matters. Well, it's standardization, guys. At the end of the day, keep in mind that Bank of Thailand adopting a similar model to Project Rosalind suggests what? Potential trend towards a standardized approach for CBDCs. It could involve API gateways, two-tier systems, and what's it going to do? It's going to benefit QNT. What about that interoperability? Well, yeah. The focus on interoperability, don't get it twisted, guys, with existing payment systems aligns with QNT's capabilities. QNT facilitates communication between different blockchains. We already know that. We already studied this for a couple of years. If you're new to Quant, it's all right. But understand that it's so much more than an ERC20 token. Now, what about validation of Rosalind? Back to what Tokenizer was talking about. The success of Rosalind's model with Thailand CBDC's architecture validates what? Its approach. This could lead, of course, to wider adoption of Rosalind's concepts in other CBDC projects, of course, boosting Q&T's relevance. What does it specifically mean for Q&T, if you're asking that? I'm ahead of you guys. I understand where you're coming from. What it means for Q&T is two main things, and that's increased demand. Wider adoption of CBDCs with Q&T compatible features could increase demand for Q&T tokens. You guys have been wanting to hear this for a while. What about market positioning? What about strategic marketing, positioning, right? Well, Q&T is positioning itself as a facilitator for interoperability in CBDCs, and it strengthens its role in the future of course, finance. Now, while I want to be rah, Quant, as we know, there's always uncertainties in anything. You better believe Quant still has competition. What kind of competition? Well, while Q&T seems to be setting the standard, there, of course, will always be competition from other solutions aiming to serve, in the CBDC space. We've seen that. But again, creating something that's blockchain agnostic, or already created it, I should say, separates Quant from the pack. What about timeline? Well, actual implementation and widespread adoption of CBDCs could, of course, take time. But again, what have we recently seen? We've seen literally Gilbert Verdian and other bigger players, especially when it comes to your Augustine Karstens and so on, Bank International Settlements, and all these big players showing up, like I mentioned in the previous Quant video. It's like a centralized marketplace call to action. And while, guys, all of this is great positive news for Quant, you got to keep in mind its potential as a key player in the CBDC landscape is huge. And we're going to keep focusing on covering it, whether, people feel like there's not a lot that's being done right now. There's not a lot going on. You have to keep in mind that when things start to get quiet, watch out. That's the way I look at it. I don't know if you look at it. If anything, I want to give you that little update. I think it's a big deal. And shout out again to Tokenizer. I hope you have a great, successful move. Some of you guys ask what cold storage solution I use. I use this, and it is the Decent wallet. All right. I also, of course, have a ledger like this. All right. You can get a discount basically from going into the affiliate link, which is in all the live video descriptions and recorded and so on. And for the yahoos that are out there, they're like, this is just a shield. And, we'll fix point this out. And it's a great point. Were you aware that you don't necessarily get a discount link just going straight to the site? No, you actually have to go through a platform like this. So how cool is that? I don't think anybody's complaining about that. But anyway, use the link, get a discount. There's another one here. If you're the type of person you want to get one for you and your significant other, you can get two of them. They actually have another promotion, which is this, and I think this is cool. You can get an all-in-one card wallet plus backup card package. Interesting. I thought that was cool. And again, one of the main key things I like about the Decent wallet is not having to do the red tape of jumping through all the hoops for XDC and the custom folder. I mean, Edward Vincent can vouch on that. Some of you guys can too as well in regards to ledger. That was a pain in the butt. You don't have that problem. You literally open up your phone, it's on your app, track everything that's going on, right? And saying goes, not your keys, not your crypto. You know the drill. Check it all out though if you wish to do so. It is truly the cold storage solution that I use. For the most part, there's still some on ledger that, I kind of split it up on it and so on. So it is what it is. But if I have preference over one, I'm going with this one. A lot easier to use and so on. And some people, even to this day, still ask me which one I use.